what started out as a question that seemed so simple, that was going to have a very simple answer from a few weeks ago when I was first asked this, has turned into something a lot more complex, because there's an awful lot that I now need to consider, and an awful lot that I have been considering the last couple of weeks when it comes to answering this question, because it encompasses so much and embodies so much. And I guess it's come at a time where, because like the old way that I used to run this channel, I had something like 300 and something, maybe more videos on this channel. I don't even remember. I think it's up in the 500s, but I'm not sure. I had a lot of videos on this channel before I had to delete them all. I lived a completely different life back then. This was before going into my second year of university. So this was like right at the very, very, very beginning of the relationship that I have with my husband. This was going back only a few years, but it's a long time. Like when I look back at it, about how different I was then when I was practicing celibacy to how I am now. Back then, I showed off my altars. I showed off how to perform certain rituals a certain way. I would do so in such a way, going back to that previous statement, I'd do so in such a way to either show other people alternatives. So for example, a lot of people would say, how do you make holy water? I'm feeling really overwhelmed, because lots of different sources are saying lots of different things and I'm freaking out a little bit. So I would do my own version, and then I would get my friend at the time, who were also members of the YouTube pagan community, to get them to do videos, or at least I would find theirs and then link their videos in my description box for my version, so that whoever asked those questions would have more than one source to go off, see how we actually then performed that particular working, and then they would then feel a lot better and a lot less overwhelmed. So it was mostly for educational purposes, but in the same vein, while I was helping and assisting and educating other people, I was also asking much more experienced people to help me out. So if I would put out a working, for example, and I didn't say a word right, or I wasn't quite sure where to put my foot, or what can I use as an alternative for a particular ingredient because it's just not available in this part of Europe and such and so forth, then other much more experienced people can say, oh, actually, I suggest this. You can probably use that as a dupe, or you could use that in place of, or don't use it at all. Just use all the other stuff, and you just have to imbue a little bit more magic in that part when that's needed. But otherwise, you'll be okay or not okay, and such and so forth. It's the idea of educating other people, educating yourself, and also networking and just socializing in general. So when back then, I would quite happily show my altars. But at the same time, there was a really big aspect that I didn't really share with a lot of people, and people who got to know me on more of a social level, if they became my friend, they would learn over time that I grew up with, I was raised by two women, my aunt, who was my grandmother's sister, and then my mum, which is my grandmother's daughter. But they were both, and like most people in my family, for the most part, they're mostly conservative Christians. Not conservative Christian in the American sense, because like I said, we grew up in the UK, so it's very different from anywhere else. So for them, it was more a case of, as long as I lived under their roof, it was their rules. So even though I had my own bedroom, I would set up my own sacred space, but it was usually somewhere kind of small. And I wouldn't have all of my tools on top of the altar or anything like that. I would have them stored away because I didn't want my family to see them and then immediately smash everything up or take them all away and such and so forth. So I'd already had it in my mindset that because of the upbringing that I had, I knew that I would be persecuted within my own home. I had to be very careful about what I had on show and such and so forth. As the years went by, once I started uploading to YouTube and started building up a bit of a following and building up more of a network and talking to more people, it then became, my altar then became two things. While on the one hand, it was always going to be my sacred space, my holy place, like to the point where I wouldn't even do tarot card readings or any form of divination on my altar. Like for me, my altar was just for magic and worship only, nothing else. That's what tarot bags and cloths and boards and all that stuff is for. If I wanted to do a reading, I could do that somewhere else away from my space. I felt like that space was so holy, I wanted to keep it holy. And in the same way, I do keep it that way. But on the other hand, there was also the pressure on YouTube to perform. And I was usually pretty chilled by the idea. I didn't really mind. But it meant having to consistently make sure that I had to dress up my altar or place things on my altar in a certain way, make sure that I was positioned in a certain way in front of my altar so that when I was doing a video about whatever or talking about myths or Kundalini yoga or whatever, then people watching my video would then see my altar in the background and the candles kind of blowing, like sort of like waving in the wind ever so slightly, or something else over here. Or I would make sure to get the most beautiful tools that I consider to be beautiful and very reminiscent of whatever I was really deep into that time. And I'd have them ready and available, like just off into the background ever so slightly. Because one, I wanted people to know that when they were watching my videos, I was a fellow witch just like them, so we could be on the same level, and that's totally cool. But on the other hand, it was purely because it was like, look at me flexing with all my stuff. And it was a really bizarre thing, because I used to just have like this internal like tug of war with myself. And I'd always say, like, if I can't bring myself to sit and read runes at my altar, why on earth am I showing people my altar? Like, this is just really bizarre to me. It was just very bizarre to me. After a while, living in the households that I did, it meant that I always had to keep adapting my practices. I had to always keep adapting where and how I would display or store my magical items. So I found that it was a lot easier to put my items in drawers. Like I had a small cabinet thing that had like 2 drawers. So I'd have all the quick small items in the top, all the heavy stuff down at the bottom, and then I would only have like a few things on the top that would be the actual sacred space itself. That's what worked for me. And I feel like at this point in my life now, in this new sort of space in my life right now, I'm now in a position where I'm going to be having those conversations with my husband about what we're going to do to try and replace the altar that we lost last year. And I'm really leaning towards the idea of having a cabinet again, because I like the idea of keeping everything protected and locked away when I'm not using it. And also, a really big thing, my husband and I, we can't really decide on what colours we like for the lounge space. He loves really dark colours. I like light colours. So that's one thing. Again, I have to have those discussions with someone else, whereas in the past, I didn't really need to have those discussions with anybody else because it was just me. I was the only practitioner. So as much as I liked showing off my altar back then, now in a completely different way, I can't necessarily do that. I now have to have, like I said, those conversations with my husband. And this time around, because it's just he and I can have an altar out whenever I feel like it. I can do a magical working whenever I feel like it, because I know that it's not going to be any persecution or any judgment. My husband, for those of you who don't know, is also an occultist, so that's really awesome, for one. But now a lot of things that we do is 50-50. That's a concept that still blows my mind to this day. It still blows my mind that I'm married. Like, it's so weird. It's so weird to think about. But not only that, but I'm married to someone who also practices magic. So not only do we have to have discussions with each other about what I should, shouldn't, what I can, cannot, what he can, cannot share on social media, but for the most part, we're totally fine with it. For educational purposes, there are also certain elements where the sacredness of the altar also happens to be manifested and represented in us as a couple. We manifest as the lovers, I guess you could say, two magicians who have come together, the Emperor and the Empress, the King and the Queen. We're now a partnership. So it's still for the social aspect, it's still for the networking aspect, it's still for the educational aspect. But now with that added 50-50, it also means that it's more sacred and it's more holy for us. So will I be sharing those certain aspects now that I'm in this different place? I don't know. I don't know. It depends. Because if we do manage to get a really nice like cabinet or a nice table or something that can work as our altar, then outside of the educational aspect or the educational value, I don't think you guys will be seeing a lot of my altar space. Ooh, I don't know. I'm very much, I don't know, I've always considered like an altar to be a very sacred thing. And because I've had to move my altar around, I've had to adapt my altar so many times from the places that I lived, like from the years when I was homeless for like a few months before I went back to college and all that sort of stuff. I always carried my spirituality with me. And it was during, especially when I was homeless, it was during that time, more than anything, when I realized my connection with my deities is in here. It's in my heart and it's in my mind. I don't need to worry about having like physical tools or physical manifestations of them in my life all the time. And it was actually around that point as well that I also discovered minimalism. Because obviously when you're homeless, you don't really have much choice. You don't really have much say in what you can and cannot have. So I learned to just focus on what was important and what wasn't important. It was during that time as well, oh my God. It was during that time as well, that my Buddhist practice really kicked in, because I find that I did seek and I found the refuge that I needed to just keep myself afloat. It was a really, really, really difficult time for me. When I got that letter to state that I was finally able to go to university, like a year and a bit later, I was beyond the moon. By that point, I was really getting into Thelema a lot more at that time. And so when I was at university, I had a small working altar that was mostly Thelemic based. And then there again, I shared aspects of my altar because on the one hand, I was networking with other Thelemites and letting them know, hey, I'm a Thelemite, I'm here, I'm new, help, blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, a lot of my neo-pagan friends, Wiccan friends and all that kind of stuff, they would then see an altar that they'd never seen before. And they wanted to know what was going on, what was happening. Please explain what all of this is. And so it meant that I was able to have conversations, but also educate at the same time and say, oh my God, guys, I've just discovered that Gardner was initiated into the Golden Dawn as well as the OTO. Oh my God, that's amazing, right? So there's all these connections, like 7 degrees of separation, and it's really fascinating. And yet everybody hates Crowley, and yet the very people who absolutely hate Crowley are practitioners of witchcraft and modern Wiccanism, like Wicca and stuff. But they don't realise that he indirectly influenced the creation of Wicca. Oh my God, it's really, they all hate the person who indirectly influenced their path and blah. So it was really exciting at the time to have these conversations with people and really open up their eyes to all these new things that I was discovering. They would eventually go off and discover their own things and share that information with me. And it was just an invigorating and a fun time. I guess that was also the kind of, for me anyway, the main joys of having a YouTube channel and sharing certain aspects of my practice with people in the pagan and the occult communities. Because again, the socialization, the education and the networking aspect was incredible. And I absolutely love it. I'm still friends with a lot of these people now. And I think that's probably why I still feel comfortable showing certain aspects of my altars and spell work. I don't really share ritual work. That's more private. But there are certain things I've learned over the years that I still continue to practice now. Purely based on the experiences that I've had. And now I get to share those experiences with my husband. He gets to share his previous experiences with me. And now we have our own space, like a physical space. We also have our sacred sort of like and physical connections through our hearts and everything. And we're able to really combine all of that. So the idea of putting an altar up is something that we're going to have to pour in our own, you know, aspects of our mind, body and soul into. And because we'll build that altar together, is that something that we're willing to share with the world at this point in time? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know. If we were to be lucky enough to come into a lot of money just randomly over the next few years, and we were able to invest and buy a house, then for sure, the smallest room in the house will be a temple. For sure. It'll probably be like a 2-bedroom house or something. So we'd definitely have a temple, without a doubt. I mean, our practices are both fairly similar, but also different in that sense, because I'd be the one using the altar a lot more than he would. He's more theoretical with his approach to practicing magic. I thought I was theoretical, and then I met him and I was like, wow, he's a nerd. Oh no, rather I'm a nerd, he's a geek, it's different. But I'm a lot more practical when it comes to spell work. And I have found that since I've moved in here with him and moved to this country, I now feel like I have found what I've always wanted, which is a permanent home where I can finally have my own rules and I can put up my altar and I don't have to worry about anything. I can just do things all myself. Obviously sharing them with him as well, and it means that I can buy certain things now that will work for my practices, will work for the workings that I'm doing, and I don't necessarily have to hide them. But there is one aspect that I do need to, actually no, there's 2 aspects that I do need to kind of put out when it comes to hiding. One, hiding is more of a survival thing. It's just something that I've had to learn, like I've explained I think like 3 times already. So it's just a habit that I have. It's just a habit. So if I were to show off an altar in the future, there are going to be certain things on that altar that I will have to remove before I even start filming. And you won't even know because I won't even mention what those things are. So that's just something that I used to do, and I probably will continue to do that in the future. So that's most likely one thing that I'll be doing. It's mostly because I'm just a private person, so is my husband, and at the same time it's also because there are some people out there who do practice forms of magic where if they see something that somebody else has got, they can work magic on that person by duplicating or buying that same item as that person and then doing them a lot of harm. But I'm very much a practitioner of Liber Oz, so I shan't be doing anything like that. And so I want to protect myself. It's not necessarily something that I personally believe in myself, but I know that a lot of people have been affected by those forms of magic. So I just want to heed it as a warning and just kind of continue living that private life, I guess. And then on the other hand, we have a dog who you guys have seen. She'll be featuring in a lot of my videos because I love her to bits and she's my baby. But she sheds a whole lot. Her fur is white for the most part. Her nose and everything used to be black. That's how old she is. She's completely grey. The grey just blends in with the white. And because she sheds an awful lot, we don't want to keep an altar out in the open because we can clean and she only has to spin around 1 time and then the altar is just covered in fur. And I cannot cope. In that same vein, when it comes to aesthetics, due to having like gone through my homeless period and stuff and being more, I guess, more minimal with my approach to magic and things and what tools I end up collecting, I don't like too much stuff. And if I do get certain tools for my altar, because obviously I get to reset my life as well as this channel here, so I'm buying a lot of new things as time goes on. I'm finding that I'm making sure that I get quality items that are gonna last a very, very long time. I don't really get a lot of stuff because the cleaning is going to be a nightmare because it's mostly just getting all of her hairs off. And I don't know, I just like the idea of having minimal stuff. Like having been in a position like almost this time last year where we almost lost everything to mold. It was at that point that we realized that, you know what? We just don't need all this stuff. It's just stuff. It's stuff. If we're performing magic, the magic is within and without. You don't need stuff. So we're kind of just focusing on the idea of just making a sacred space, and that's it. That's what's going to work for us. So I think that's what we're going to be doing. I've seen a lot of other altar videos that I loved. I loved them back then. I haven't really watched any now. But I loved them back then because it was nice to have a little glimpse into somebody else's life and just see how the other half live, you know? It was nice to see how other people practiced, see what other people practiced, how they put their altars together. And while some altars were absolutely beautiful, others were just, there was so much going on. But I'm a nice person. There was a lot going on. Like you couldn't see the surface of the dresser or the table that they used. They had so much stuff going on. Like there was so much stuff. But I really appreciated the fact that this person has spent time putting all of those little items and those little trinkets on their altar top because it means something to them and their practice. It means something with the connection that they have with their deities. And to me, that's special. That trumps everything. So your own personal altar, it's totally up to you what you decide to do, if you want to share it with the world or not, or keep it as a sacred space for yourself. I personally, at this point, I'm kind of inclined to keep it private. And if it's going to be for educational purposes, I'll just bring the tools that I need and just put them on the table and just show you guys. But otherwise, I don't know. And for those of you who do have those kind of altars where there's so much stuff going on, keep them clean. I've seen a few altars over the years where they were just so beautiful, but oh, the camera got way too close and there was so much dust. It was like, damn, I can feel the heat from here. So that sort of stuff freaks me out. That's where I kind of like the minimalist approach. But I don't know, I thought that was a very interesting question, and that's why this is like the whole video. It's wow, it's long, I'm sorry. But I told you it was going to be long and complex, so let me know your thoughts down below if you want to answer that question. If you also want to do a video response to that question, again, let me know. If you would like a picture of the card that I used for that question, just tweet at me or something and I can send you a copy of it so you can add it into your own videos as well. That's really cool. I think that's everything. I'm just going to go back to keeping my mouth shut now because I kind of just want to heal. And yeah. I haven't been able to do yoga for the last few days. It's really sad. I have though. It's bad. But they say you shouldn't put your head down. But I guess that was just for the first 24 hours. I'm not sure. Anyway, thanks for watching. Imhotep. I don't usually like kombucha. Well, it's not that I don't like kombucha. I do. But I have to find the right one. So that's what I've been doing for the last few years of my life, trying to find the right kombucha, and I think I have found it. I kind of want to show it off, but at the same time I don't. It's not an ad, I'm not sponsored, but it's just, I found the kombucha of my dreams, and it's really nice. I like these bowls, they're kind of handy. I think I'll probably use them for like spells or something. Yeah. They're dark enough. I could do some magic with these.